Danny Polishchuk. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm excellent.
It's SantaCon at the moment.
Mental.
What is that?
This is actually the first year I've ever been here for it. Every other year I've somehow managed to avoid it, but basically the worst people you know dress up like Santa Claus and they get hammered. Like what time is it right now? It's like 3 o'clock?
Yeah, half three.
So they get hammered in the afternoon. Like, did you see the lines?
Yeah.
For the bars? Like, bars right now are it's like St. Patty's Day. What kind of lines right now?
So it's what? This
like there was a bar
Saturdays before Christmas or something?
I guess, yeah. And but it's I guess. And it's like there's lines literally bending around the corner for just pubs.
And everyone's dressed up.
Everybody's dressed up, everybody's getting like really drunk in the afternoon. Comedy on SantaCon Day is like generally
Shit
really
show.
bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad because everybody shows up wasted. And fights. Like,
what's the
there's,
demographic of people that attend SantaCon?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? It's pretty diverse.
It's
like
equal
I was looking
opportunity
around.
degeneracy.
Yeah, it's like you're like, it's a bit of everybody. It's pretty wild. But yeah, so because it took me like just a lot longer to get over here from my house. And I was wondering, I'm like, what is going on? And then I start kind of, I was listening to like my audiobook and then I'm looking around and I can see all the Santa Claus hats. I go, and then when I got
This
out,
doesn't seem right.
Yeah, but then when I got out, I go, oh, okay.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Have you got your IG back yet?
No.
What's
have
happened? Tell us what's the story?
Essentially what happened is there's like I know some people who are kind of high up fairly in the world of technology. A lot of people have a lot of opinions, but essentially on October, we actually figured out last night it might be as a result of you actually.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We think that's like my new current theory. So
Right.
on October 8th, I've had an Instagram account for 12 years, never had a post taken down.
Yep.
Nothing, no issues at all. And then on October 8th, I logged into Instagram and it says your account's permanently suspended for sexual solicitation, which is essentially what they get for like OnlyFans girls, right? I'm like, what the hell? This must be a mistake. I'm like, this must be a mistake, right? So I appeal it. And in Instagram, there's just like a blue button that just says, would you like to appeal? And I press the button. And then 1 minute later, they say, we've denied your appeal. And then but they say, if this is a mistake, you can write a little like kind of blurb to them. So I write a thing, I get it back. And I'd been posting some content, remember, like basically the thing that you showed Douglas Murray, right?
Yes.
About the
Gays for Gaza.
Gays for Gaza stuff, right? And I was making fun of those people. And you'd have to think that a lot of people who probably work in content moderation at Meta probably side more with those people than me, than the person making fun of those people, right? So anyways, I get it back. 2 days later, exact same thing happens. I get suspended again, same thing. And I'm going pretty hard on like, posting about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Again, same thing happens. And then get it back again though. And then on November 8th, which would be 1 month ago, exact same thing happens. This time though, I press that blue appeal button, lose 1 minute later, and there's no option for me to
Three strikes and you're out.
I guess, right? And then we were talking last night, and because he brought up the thing, and then I went and you posted that thing on November 6th that went super viral. Now I don't know if it's related because I was obviously having issues before that, but I have like a target on my back.
Douglas Murray fucking splash zone, dirty zone.
I guess, but at Meta, like they put a target on me, and so I have one friend who thinks either it's some content moderator there who just like doesn't like me, saw that I had a bunch of stuff like going viral. And they were just like, we got to get rid of this guy. My one friend thinks that maybe someone actually literally paid money because there's this whole black market, like underground economy with like Instagram. And because I think it's related to the OnlyFans stuff because OnlyFans girls, they promote OnlyFans on Instagram, make tons of money. Then they get kicked off. But then they're happy to pay $2,000, is what I have to pay to maybe get my thing. But yeah, it's just like a tax and they're happy to pay. They go,
wasn't there like rumors that these girls were offering to suck off?
Yeah, there was. Well, that apparently kind of put a wrench in things. This is the one girl who went on No Jumper, and she's like, I've been kicked off like 10 times, and I just keep going
sucking
and
dick.
Yeah, like fucking some guy at Instagram and keep getting it back. And
have you considered that?
That'll be up next. Yeah, that's my that'll be my Hail Mary, because I'll tell you what,
break glass in case
very difficult to be a working comedian without Instagram. I mean, that's where everybody kind of consumes, it's funny because it used to be probably 10 years ago, maybe Twitter, but now Instagram, TikTok, those are the kind of places.
I don't see any comedians doing shit on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not that kind of. I posted my whole special, my most recent special. It's on Twitter.
Oh, right, cool.
And whatever, I have like a decent amount of views on it, but that's not the place that drives people to maybe go see you live or consume your comedy content. It's a different type of person on Twitter. It's just a different, like, I was actually on the train over here and I've been noticing it more because I take the train in New York. I'll look at like what people are doing on their phones. And very recently, I've noticed more people are on Twitter than ever before. I never used to see people on Twitter.
Interesting.
They'd be on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, or whatever. And now I do actually see people on Twitter. But anyway, so I'm currently in the process of paying some guy, and then hopefully I get it back.
Hey, if you know how to fix Instagram accounts, get in touch with
The
Danny.
crazy thing is I've had a
back.
number of people say, like, I have a hook. Like, my friend works at Meta or whatever, and then they're like, yeah, they tried through their internal recovery system, and they're like upholding your ban. They're like, you really pissed somebody off.
Dude, I have a friend who was trying to get his O1 visa to come over to America. He already had his visa and was trying to flip it again in like whatever the conservative leaning fucking world, and someone somewhere did a thing, like pressed a button that just delayed his entire visa by 9 months. Like you can like put a question in.
Yeah, you could just like a request for, that's the same visa I have.
Bullshit.
You say like a request for more information or
9
something.
months of just like, hey, get fucked. You don't get to come back in the country.
Yep. Yeah.
It's weird because I'm so non-conspiratorial with like most of the shit that I think about, but then even at a low level, like bullshit like that.
Yeah.
It's like that's just some guy like that's got a vendetta or is unhappy.
Yeah. It's just someone saw something trending that was, because I had like, when I got kicked off, that's the thing. You only get kicked off once you're kind of popping off, right? And then there's more.
No one cares about the person.
Nobody cares about the
1,000
person.
followers.
Exactly, right? So, but so anyways, I had a few things, and someone just sees something, go, I don't like this guy. I work at Meta.
Go fuck yourself.
And go fuck yourself, yeah. And just, and I guess I'm not quite at that, if you were massive, 1 million followers.
Yep.
Probably a little more difficult.
There's a zone in the middle, big enough to be noticed, not so big that you can't reach people to like get it back.
Right. And so, I mean, a lot of people hear about it that I know, and they're like, because here's the craziest thing about the algorithm, which people do not realize, is the algorithm decides what you see, right? Obviously, because it's not like chronological. But because it decides what you see, people are so programmed that, like, so when I got deleted, people don't know my account's deleted. They just forget you exist, right? They don't know you're gone. Like literal family and stuff. Like my fiance's cousin was like, why hasn't Danny posted anything in a month? Like she messaged her, she goes, why hasn't Danny been posting anything? And she's like, oh, he got kicked off. And
it's the same as someone dying. It's like the digital equivalent of being
kind of
excommunicado.
Yeah, it's like excommunicated, but like people don't even, unless they're like the diehard fans, and
they're looking for your account.
They're like looking and then they look, but otherwise, I mean, and not even that. So some people I was getting DMs being like, is this actually you? They don't even believe it.
Jesus.
Like they're like, they don't even, and even in my bio, it says like, yes, deleted, this is me, blah, blah, blah. And then, but you're not verified anymore. And so it's mental.
Wow. Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
We'll see.
I had Whitney Cummings on the show about a month ago, and I was super impressed with her. Like,
she's great.
She's very, very impressive. She said to me before I went on tour, in order for art to imitate life, you have to live a life.
Yeah.
And it was her explanation for why comedians just talk about airports, dinner, and comedy.
Yep.
Because if you're on the road, that's all you know. And this was a month ago, and since then, all I've done is be on the road. For 1 full month, all I've done is be on the road. And I've found myself having conversations with my friends about all that I've got to talk about is like airports and check-in and luggage and shows and what I had for dinner last night. And that's it.
I mean, when that's your life, right?
It's so strange.
Yeah. That's, I know, like, sometimes you will have a joke, something happens at the airport, and you're like, ugh.
It's the most comedian comedy ever.
Right? And you're like, but it still is funny. But yeah, it is that kind of thing where you're like, yeah, you have, and that's why I do try and make a point of doing stuff. Like traveling and having a life, and like traveling not for comedy, because a lot of comics were like, yeah, I'll go somewhere if I'm doing a show. But
did you do Asia recently?
Recently, no. I've been to Southeast Asia though. I spent like 15 years ago. I spent a lot of time there.
Okay, I see. But yeah, I've been thinking about that. I can kind of see. I know that everyone hates it. It's like comedians just talking about comedy and the crowd and the venue and all the rest of the stuff. But if that's like the fucking front and center of your life.
Yeah.
What else is there?
I will say the one thing about Twitter, which there's like this compulsion, which I'm sure you've had, and I try to avoid it at all costs, is to publicly blast some company like that's wronged you, because you're like, I don't even know if there's any real reason to have Twitter other than the pot, like
To be able to call out
to
American
call out,
Airlines.
yeah, you know, be like, oh, and sometimes they're like, oh, they really, and you're like, I could really just make a stink right now and feel, it's like you get a dopamine rush.
Feel righteous, as you do it. It's I don't know. There's definitely an upper bound on how many times you can get away with doing that. There used to be an account called @DJs Complaining, which was just all of like Tiesto like arguing with his bags not being allowed to be on carry-on and stuff like that.
And the problem is sometimes it does work. So then you're kind of
positively reinforced to argue again.
Yeah, keep going.
It's the internet equivalent of "Do you know who I am?"
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Twitter equivalent of
And I mean, if you're a big enough account, some airlines like, oh, we don't need this. Bad publicity.
Yeah. But really, what's going to happen? The guy that looks after the social media is going to find the flight that you're on and like tweet the air hostess to say, hey, make sure that he's allowed to have his nuts, or you should give him a second clock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The outcome is nothing.
Yeah. Normally they're like weather delays, you know, where it's actual frustration, where like they can't do something like, you know, it's
shaking your hand at the fucking moon.
I'm not trying to defend airlines, but sometimes these, you know, it is like a pointless thing. Obviously, sometimes they do lose your luggage and
stuff. It is kind
of
the equivalent of like an internet Karen in a way, to just be like, fucking world logistics.
Yeah, I guess the ideal scenario is you tweet a thing and then their stock price drops 10%, you know, and you're like, I just cost them $4 billion.
Who was it? Was it Cristiano Ronaldo that moved a Coke can, I think, away from in front of him? Was it Cristiano Ronaldo?
Oh, and like replace it with like a Gatorade or something?
Yeah, like there was a Coke can in front of it. I'm sure it was Cristiano Ronaldo maybe a couple of years ago, and he like just got the can and moved it out of shot, and their stock price plummeted. Dude,
that's right.
Yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo, fucking knew it. I knew it. Have you been watching the Britney Spears arc recently?
Yeah, I mean, I was day one being like, they should not be removing this conservatorship from the jump. So this is very much chickens coming home to roost. I mean, she obviously. Have you ever heard the saying with child stars, where like the point that you become super famous is the point where you stop developing? Like as a person,
arrested development,
essentially. So it's like that's why Michael Jackson was like a 13-year-old.
Interesting.
So she's like a 6-year-old. She was like super, you know, Disney Club, whatever, Mickey Mouse Club, and like maybe whatever. She got really famous, but she's like a child. And then, it kind of tracks, not for everyone, obviously, but it kind of does track. But yeah, she, like you see, I don't know if she's on medication or anything, but you can just see it in the eyes.
She either is or should be.
Yeah, but you can see it in the eyes. Like there's not a lot of activity in the eyes.
It makes me feel uncomfortable. Like I don't follow her, but you know, you just stuff surfaces.
My fiance loves her and constantly because
loves her, or is like watching it like a slow motion car crash.
Honestly, chicks like they know, not like a slow motion car crash. Like,
but if you're like most girls are pretty empathetic and emotionally tuned in and can see what's going on, how do you not look at Britney and go, this person needs some fucking help, and also needs to stop posting selfies of her dancing in her hallway?
Yeah, and she looks mental. I mean, the one with the knives that ended up being like the meme and stuff.
Britney Spears puts aside family drama to post a racy Instagram video of her running her hands over her body while promoting Victoria's Secret bras and underwear.
Yeah.
It's like, I've watched this video.
Yeah.
It's like her in bed.
Yeah, I saw
like,
it. My girl sent that to me. She
what
just
the
sent
fuck is going on?
But when they say promoting, like Victoria's Secret's like, we don't have anything. Yeah, we're like, we don't have anything to do with this.
I'm just wearing it.
Yeah, just wearing it.
In the same way as if we just were wearing like
money.
Calvin Klein's. It's like Calvin Klein podcast.
Yeah. I mean, she seems like she's got something mentally going on. I don't know. Like, does she tour anymore? Does she have like a residency?
I don't know. I don't think that she's done a show in
a while.
A very long time.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. All of her videos are filmed on what looks like a 2011 BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Which doesn't give like sane.
No.
It's like that, like the Android tap.
Yeah, totally.
Come on. I don't know, man.
I don't know. I don't know what needs to happen with her so that people are concerned, but you know, it sounds like she had this conservatorship for a reason.
A reason.
Yeah, there was a real reason for it. And but you know, when the tides turn in public perception.
Yeah, that's true. People want to kind of get behind the person who has an overbearing parent and
father specifically. It's like man versus woman in this as well.
Yeah, it ticks all of the boxes.
Yeah. So.
Do you know Meat Canyon? Do you know that guy? He does those illustration videos.
Oh, yeah.
He's really great.
Yeah.
So he's got a second channel called Papa Meat, which is pretty good. And he did a reacting to Swifties thing.
Yeah.
He ended up getting tons of death threats.
Oh, yeah. They're crazy.
So, I mean, Britney Spears maybe has some fans, and that conservatorship thing was like people were chasing after that. At least the advantage you have if you do criticize Britney Spears is her fans aren't rabid and totally current. Like everyone's kind of just like historical fans.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift has very motivated, unbelievably motivated fans. So yeah, he had full-on death threats from what he said.
Well, because Britney Spears doesn't have 13-year-old fans.
Yeah.
Right, and those are like the 13-year-old girl is maybe the meanest iteration of a human that can possibly exist.
Not get on the other side of that.
Yeah.
There's like Hamas and then 13-year-old girl.
Yeah. Like if you could like get if Taylor Swift became like Muslim or something like Islamic Jihad, the West would fall. We'd be done.
Yeah, I saw a video. This was before her most recent tour kicked off, and someone had taken one from inside of a stadium. You know, you're in the gangway. And you're kind of walking around the side, maybe like kind of high up, and you could hear the music and see the crowd, and she's videoing the crowd like inside the stadium, and they're all singing along and stuff. And then she pans to outside where there's a car park, and there's 40,000 people in the car park, singing along with the show that they couldn't get tickets to get into. Inside.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my friend, he has a 6-year-old daughter. And his daughter was like, I want to go in Toronto to see Taylor Swift. And he went and looked, and tickets were like, 2 tickets were $5,000 to get in, just to get in. We're not talking like I mean the Rogers Center. Well, it's all resale because it's like all scalpers buy them, so it's the only way to get them really, other than like this lottery. But everybody was complaining. I mean, it made it.
This
is
the equivalent to being like in sub-Saharan Africa and wanting an American visa.
Yeah, pretty much. But it made it to like Congress was even talking about it because the scalpers were getting them all, and then the markup was so insane. Like it was. We actually had a guy who on our Boyscast Patreon called in, or like not called, sent in a message, and he wanted advice, and he's like, I want to go, I have tickets for Taylor Swift in Denver, and I want to take this girl on a first date. And then we looked up the resale price. He's like, should I take this girl on a first date to Taylor Swift? And we looked up the resale price, and they were like $2,000 a ticket. I'm like, you can't take a girl on a first date that costs $5,000, or whatever, $4,000, and then everything else. I'm like, no, you just can't do that. I'm like, sell.
Too keen.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah. So these scalpers are like the Martin Shkreli of Taylor Swift concerts.
Yeah.
They bought like fucking Dexapro or whatever it is, and then pump the price up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're opportunists, and but they have all these crazy like programs and stuff that are able to.
Ed Sheeran had a thing. I'm pretty sure you had to submit ID for each individual ticket to kind of get around this.
Yeah, there's some that do that where you have to just like, I can't remember who, but you have to like show ID.
She's going to make $1 billion from this tour, I think.
Yeah.
It's like already the highest grossing tour in history.
Yeah, that's, I mean, good for her, I guess.
Fucking wild.
I don't listen to it, but I mean, I'm not the type of person to,
Dude, there was people should go watch that Papa Meat video once they're finished with this. It's pretty fucking interesting. She did a movie. It was like a Taylor Swift movie.
Yeah. It was just like a concert.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe, and it was like maybe behind the scenes tour vlog or some other stuff. And they must have given out like LED batons. So it's kind of half like a party.
Yeah.
In the cinema, whilst it's also the thing on the TV. And there's videos from inside, and the credits are rolling, and the girls have got out of their seats and they're stood underneath the fucking projector, like dancing in a circle, like holding hands. It's like halfway between a rave, a seance, a fucking sermon, and a cinema watching.
Yeah. My friend Alex Byron, he's a comedian in Canada. He did a video where it was at one of these movie showings or whatever, and for Taylor Swift, and then he kind of like picked his spot where it was just before it was starting, and they were waiting for it to start, and then he came in and pretended that he worked for the theater, and he goes, "Sorry, everybody, but we're having an issue with the projector, so there's going to be we're not going to be showing the Taylor Swift, but instead we'll be showing the John Mayer documentary or whatever." And then his girlfriend, just to get it started, his girlfriend started throwing, because she was filming, she started throwing stuff at him, and then like people were like boo and going insane. Pretty funny video.
Were you with us when we went to Cheesecake Factory, and it was the night of the Barbie movie. Jesus Christ. So I didn't know that the Barbie movie was getting released that night.
Okay.
And we went to Grosvenor Center, what's it called? The Grove.
The Grove. Oh, yeah, in LA, yeah.
Dude, so we get out of the car and it's just armies of women in pink.
Yeah.
Like
New York was like that too.
Fucking platoons of them.
Yeah. Did you see it? I didn't see it.
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
No, I don't see movies like I used to.
No.
It bums me out.
They recently did Cillian Murphy and Margot Robbie did a like thing together, like an interview. I think it was for Vanity Fair or Variety or something like that, where they like finally got those two, like the Barbenheimer
together
thing to have a conversation about each other. I got a vasectomy due to climate grief. Now I'm
the
to let
CBC,
go of my
right?
backup plan.
We just talked about this on the Boyscast.
What do you think?
I mean, the natural logical conclusion is if you were so worried about human impact on climate, you kill yourself, right? If you really care, right? Like, isn't that like, okay, well, you know, if you want to get a vasectomy, I can do you one further, right? It's crazy. I mean, these people are mental. Their brains have been so destroyed with this like anxiety and fear about the future. Like, you know, humanity is not the type of thing you want to bet against. Like, it kind of always finds a way, you know? Like, everybody's like, oh my God, we're doomed. Like, this doomerism, it's probably existed forever. There's never, and you know, and yet here we are. So I don't know. What do you think about it?
For about a year and a half, I'd been offering to get a vasectomy to do more than just talk about how the world didn't need any more humans. In and around our old Nova Scotia house, I'd periodically make that horizontal scissor mime to reiterate my offer. News of rising temperatures on the kitchen radio, finger snip. Atlantic Ocean looking more and more disturbed, finger snip. Even back then in 2007, the North Atlantic hurricane season was intensifying due to climate change. Snip, snip. Daryl, my then partner, called out from a few rows back in a crowded flight. We'd originally been seated together but relocated so a mum could sit with her kids. When I looked back over the packed seats amidst the roar of burning engines, she smiled at me and mimed a scissor cut with 2 fingers. Yes, she finally said, in a gesture understandable only to me. My then partner called out. This sounds like a guy who did and now is no longer with the person who...
Yeah, also an interesting thing here, because this is an ultimate in virtue signaling, obviously, to say, like, I'm saving the planet by not reproducing. And then they insisted on including... No, but they insisted on... It's interesting. They insist on including, which is unnecessary, that they were not... They were sitting separately because they had to give up their seats so a mother could sit with their child. Like, that's like a weird thing. You're like, okay, you didn't have to say that other than you just have to be... the best human possible, and everybody else who's reading this is just scum.
That's part of why it was so thrilling when my now wife Giselle voluntarily mentioned not wanting kids on our first date. 3 years later, we got married and moved in a kind of working honeymoon to sweaty equatorial Singapore. Admittedly, our next 4 years of travel around Asia made us more a part of the climate crisis problem than the solution. Basically, I decided to carbon offset my destructive, selfish lifestyle by not propagating my own DNA and instead traveled the world.
This is like a borderline Onion article.
Yeah.
From not that long ago. And but this is the CBC. This is Canadian Broadcasting. This is government-funded propaganda right here.
Did you see, I came up with this idea of toxic compassion. Do you read my little...
No, I haven't seen that. No.
All right. So toxic compassion is the prioritization of short-term emotional comfort over everything else, over truth, reality, actual long-term outcomes, flourishing, everything. It optimizes for looking good rather than doing good. People would rather claim that body fat has no bearing on health and mortality outcomes to avoid making overweight individuals feel upset, even if this causes them to literally die sooner or have a worse quality of life. People would rather say that children growing up in single-parent households suffer no worse outcomes than those from two-parent homes, even if this misleads parents, children, and teachers about why kids behave the way they do. Campaigners would sooner shout defund the police as a response to what they perceive as unfair treatment of criminals, even if this results in more crimes being committed against people from those minority backgrounds due to the abandonment of police officers from those areas. So it's people that say what they think sounds good, but ultimately might net a negative outcome. And Peterson said it's the prioritization of short-term emotional comfort over long-term thriving. It's going to hurt now, but the consequences long-term are positive.
Yeah, you just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
But you disregard what the actual long-term outcome is. The same as with this bloke.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I'm actually just listening right now to Jonathan Haidt, The Coddling of the American Mind, and they talk about like he's talking about like all the safetyism stuff, where essentially it has these actual like negative outcomes, you know, because some kid got like abducted in like the 70s, and then they like essentially were clamping down so hard on kids that it actually made them worse off, you know, because you don't let them go outside, and because like, you know, obviously it's tragic that a kid got abducted or whatever. There was actually, he talked about it. I can't even believe this. I had to look it up yesterday. In 2015 in Missouri, this family, in order to teach their 6-year-old a lesson about not going with strangers, abducted him and like renditioned him and from like a mall, and they put like a bag on his head, and then they
it's like a mock execution,
like basically like the craziest lesson you could ever imagine. And then
this trauma is going to teach you not to let it happen again.
Yeah, don't go home with strangers or whatever. And like, I don't even think he did. Like, I don't think there was an incident. They just abducted him to kind of teach him this lesson, you know, kind of get ahead of it. Preemptively. Yeah,
well, that's the fucking horseshoe of like helicopter parenting, that it comes back around to just super extreme mistreatment of your kid.
Yeah, in the guise of, you know, I'm helping them. You're like, this kid is gonna have this trauma forever.
The one on the other side that's like, oh yeah, my kid will be fine. It's like, it's the same idea. My kid will be fine. My kid will be fine with me mock fucking abducting him. From this thing.
But there's no shortage of those kids who were like, yeah, my parents worked, and you know, I had a lot of autonomy, and I was fine.
I seem to be okay.
I was fine. Maybe I got a little bit of trouble, but
you see the stuff about peanut allergies, the increase in peanut.
That was another one in the Jonathan Haidt thing, was because it tripled the amount of peanut allergies because they removed peanuts.
Yeah. So if you grow up in a household that has a washing machine, like a dishwasher, that doubles your chances of asthma. And if you grow up in a house that has a dog, it halves your chances of asthma, because you just get exposed to dirt. Right. So basically, you're double, and then you double again the chances of it.
Why the dishwasher?
Dishwasher presumably just cleans.
It's just the environment.
So it's such a sterile way that you don't get the tiny little doses of germs. And the same for dogs. Dogs coming in and out, bringing dirt in, like playing in the grass, etc. So yeah, there's just ways where you can sterilize the environment so much that instead of it making kids and people safer, what it does is create such a protected environment that there is nowhere that they never deal with any kind of discomfort. And this is culturally, ideologically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally the exact same thing we see with toxic compassion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on hand sanitizer being bad for you.
You think?
There's so many things. Me and Ryan were just talking about it, how all the stuff that used to be bad for you is now good for you. Like, remember, I don't know, but like my mom was very much, even still, she doesn't come around to, you know, she's like, you got to eat breakfast. You have to eat breakfast. It's like, you'll die. You'll have, if you don't eat breakfast now, everybody's like, don't eat breakfast. Or it's like, you got to eat. Now everybody's like fasting. Like, you know, it's all the stuff. It's literally bro science has beat down mom science. And mom science is just kind of reeling. But it just, I don't know. I won't be surprised if it'll be something similar with the hand sanitizer, where they go, people are hand sanitizing too much, and it's causing a rise in whatever.
Downstream from that, yeah. Well, we've been doing these meet and greets after the show, which is really great. But you do realize that, like, if anybody of these 600 people that I've just shook hands and taken a photo and like hugged or like, you know, like slap five with, if any of them, it's like I got it all. We did get COVID. All of us got COVID separately. James in Australia, Luke in the UK, me in Austin. We all got COVID about 2 months before the show, the tour began, and we were like, tour antibodies, like, fuck yeah, like, we've done it, I'm going to be immune. Yeah. Immediately went on tour and just got wrecked by like other different viruses.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the nature of how it goes, but yeah, I don't know. It's unavoidable. Like, I was just on the train over here. One thing I still find so difficult to understand is couples where one's masked and one's not. Because surely the one that's unmasked will then give you whatever you're trying to avoid, right? Like, am I missing something? But I see it all the time. You're like a couple where one's masked. But like, how
you're gonna get in the same bed tonight?
Yeah, like you're gonna kiss later. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's someone who's way smarter than me who can explain that to me. Because I see it all the time. Like, I saw it literally just on the train right over here.
We were in Banff in Alberta.
Yeah.
And there was people walking out and about in what looks like the cleanest air in the world.
Oh, it's like you can it's the best.
Purest air on the planet. And yeah, people still outdoor masking, which I don't know. I did reflect on this a little bit, like how I feel now about like someone in a car on their own or something, you know, when people wore masks in cars on their own, or someone out and about in fresh air at this stage of post-pandemic, like fucking non-case risk. It does make me think people who were so vehement against any masking ever, like no one should ever have to do it. It's like, well, maybe just my judgment of the situation is that my sensitivity needed it to be a few years later.
Yeah.
Whereas they were like, even now in the midst of it, even though we don't know it, that's like how.
And I mean, do what you want, you know, like this is America. Like it's the most ethos of this country is it's more just like, if you want to wear a mask in a car, like that's your right. It's the problem was when they were saying you have to do it. And then people are like, okay, well, that's very much un-American, you know, to make anybody do anything. But I mean, have you spent any time in Asia?
Yeah, a little bit. Not since COVID.
But so they've been, you know, like I traveled in Asia 15 years ago, and, you know, you'd walk around and everybody's wearing masks.
Yeah, that was for air quality and stuff, right?
Well, air quality, and I think they had some kind of smaller pandemics, and they just are generally, and I do think if you are very, like strict about it and, you know, proper, I'm sure it does somewhat lower your, risk of getting ill to
there's like
some degree.
You could play a pretty good game.
I just don't care that much.
You could play quite a good. We actually did play a pretty good game of Asian or COVID, which is like, why are they wearing the mask? Is it because of like historical air quality?
Yeah.
Or is it because of COVID?
Yeah. I heard in Thailand, actually, someone explained to me that some people, because they wear these really big masks that go like literally here, and it's because their class system, like many other places, is the more tanned you are.
Yes, the lower class you
are. The
lower
class you are. So and skin whitening's huge in Thailand.
Dude, I went to Thailand. I saw this. The girls that worked at the front of the restaurants, the secretaries for like offices, for massage places, all of that stuff would have like lighter skin, but you can see there's a line here, and it just completely drove home how culturally inculcated I was in the UK. For me to look at that and say, oh, how strange, like purposefully making your skin lighter because people who work in the fields are seen as like indigent laborers. That means that they're of lower status. The people who have white collar jobs that work indoors, they don't get tanned. How silly that you would try and lighten your skin. I go back to Newcastle upon Tyne, the place where the British version of Jersey Shore was filmed, Geordie Shore, to see girls make their faces fucking orange to like give the appearance of, you know, I spend time outside and I can go to Marbella whenever I want. And stuff. And it's the exact same, but in reverse.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
And I just didn't see it. I was like, how strange, as I go back to Newcastle to get caked in fake tan.
Right. I guess it's the quickest way to signal something, right? It's just
visually.
Like it's the equivalent of wearing like a Rolex, you know, but for
such a strange quirk. I'll never forget one of my friends who's a DJ told me this story. We kind of you say like cultural thermometer of what you're used to anchoring off and what you actually you go to somewhere new and everything's upside down, fucking bar stool's been turned around. He went and played a DJ gig in South America. He's a DJ, he parties, he wanted some cocaine. He was like, I'm in like fucking Ecuador or Argentina or Colombia or some shit. He was like, I'm fucking, the source is here.
Yeah.
Like the fountain of cocaine is here. So he goes to the promoter and he's like, can you get me some cocaine? And he looked at him and was like, are you sure? It's like, yes, I would like some cocaine. He's like, fucking hell, man. I mean, like, I can get you some, and he was thinking, oh God, like maybe there's going to be police. Maybe there's like the prison sentences for it are really high, or it's like very high. You know, we're going to involve ourselves in some gang stuff. What it turned out was that people who do cocaine in these areas, it's seen as super dirty. It's seen as a scummy drug. But what is it? 3TB or something? What's that?
2CB.
Yes, 2CB. 3TB.
Yeah, the pink stuff.
2CB. Yeah, 2CB is seen as the high class shit.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to get a hold of down there.
Yeah.
So the drug is the same. And in fact, probably of way better quality than the stepped on shit that you'll buy on the street corner in fucking New York.
No question.
But because the cultural position, like the map of that particular terrain was like, this is easy and cheap to get. So it just completely shows that the value of the thing is not intrinsic of the thing. It is the difficulty of acquisition and the price.
Yeah.
And like the cultural
and like 2CB is like, it's like hot. Have you ever seen it? It's hot pink.
Yes.
Like it's this weird thing. And you're like, oh God. Yeah. So Yeah, I don't know. It's I had this guy on my call-in show, Johan Grillo, if you ever heard of him.
I do know
You know him? Yeah.
Yeah.
A few
He's
weeks.
great.
Yeah, he's amazing. I was talking to him, and he's like a narco reporter in Mexico or whatever, and he was saying actually like, yeah, cocaine is it's like popular, but it's not the most popular drug is actually I think meth right now. And they have no issues because all the fentanyl comes over the border, but they have like no issues with fentanyl there. Like
Douglas
they
Murray went to this
it.
place in Philadelphia. Have you heard of Trank?
Yeah.
Trank's like fentanyl's fentanol.
Mm-hmm.
It's for people
like makes your like skin peel and
just people, like bits of you drop off. It's like leprosy in a drug.
Yeah.
And he went to this place in Philadelphia and filmed this. I'm on like a campaign to get Douglas Murray acquired by the Daily Wire.
Yeah.
I sat down with Jeremy Boring, the CEO, and I was like, dude, you need to acquire Douglas Murray. So anyway, fucking Jeremy, if you're watching, go and do it. But Douglas went and filmed this thing. He hasn't released it yet. But yeah, he went to Philadelphia and apparently like Trank has just taken over.
That's a new one, yeah.
Yeah, taken over the city. So like fentanyl, or heroin, not enough. Fentanyl, not enough. And then there's carfentanol.
Yeah, which is like even more potent.
So fentanyl's fentanyl. And then this is like carfentanol's carfentanol.
Yeah.
Trank.
Yeah, it's sad that people are, I don't know, to get to the point where you kind of, that's what you need. Like even fentanyl's not doing it for you.
Shit that would
it's just like a
kill a normal man
self-destructive
on the head of a pin is not enough for you.
Yeah, well, you do develop a massive tolerance. Like I had a friend of mine who's a doctor in Vancouver, British Columbia, and they have a big drug problem there, and they've decriminalized all drugs. And she was telling, because I was asking her about the fentanyl thing. She's like, yeah, the thing is with fentanyl is heroin users can't get heroin, or sometimes it's actually vice versa, where people go to heroin actually because it might be a little cheaper. I can't remember. But anyways, she says, they use so much fentanyl that they just you develop a massive tolerance to it.
Heroin's like fucking passively smoking, trying to get higher nicotine.
Kind of, but you keep building up this tolerance. So the people who actually die from fentanyl are the ones who have never ingested it, and it gets cross-contaminated.
Yes.
And so they have no.
Have you heard of spice? Is spice a thing over here?
Spice is like it's like fake weed or something.
Yes.
So I watch a lot of Cops. The show Cops. It's like a guilty pleasure of mine, and it's actually sad because a lot of episodes, like segments in Cops, is they're like arresting someone for spice. And I'm like, why is this even illegal? And the problem is because weed's illegal. It's all in Florida. Like you always see people get arrested for spice in Florida. And I guess spice was like recently criminalized, but it wasn't always because I guess it popped up and then they take some time to make it legal. So people are forced to take it because they can't smoke weed, which is harmless essentially. Like, I mean, not harmless, but relatively on the scale of drugs, it is, like sure, it might give you some bad habits or whatever, but relatively forcing people to smoke spice, and then they're getting arrested for spice.
Yeah. There's I think the way it works, I may be wrong with this, I'm a fucking spice expert, but I'm pretty sure that it is in a spray bottle and that you spray whatever the stuff is that you smoke with this particular solution. But I remember watching this thing on YouTube, and this guy is literally wearing like 3 pairs of fucking surgical gloves.
Ugh.
Because if even a tiny bit of it at this, and he's like they're spraying at a distance, like a fucking plant sprayer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if you even got a little bit of this on you at that concentrate, it'd be like, LSD.
Yeah.
It would just completely destroy you. It's super dangerous. So yeah, it's just this. That's one of the things, I wish I'd brought it up with Jeremy actually. But that's one of the things that I would criticize the right for. This obsession with more newsworthy, like sexy stories, like stuff to do with like trans books in schools and all the rest of this shit. It's like the fentanyl problem seems like a really big deal that's just killing people fucking straight away. But I'm not really hearing anyone on the left or the right really talk about that. It's just like,
it's one of those things where
just brush it under the rug.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those things where you can't, like, you don't stop that problem by enforcement, right? It's like you almost have to stop the people who wanted, which is, the chicken and the egg war on drugs thing.
Fix the fucking people.
There's no way that you can stop every truck that comes into the United States from Mexico. It's impossible. They can maybe stop, like, even search 10% of them. And the problem with fentanyl is you need like a thing this big to kill 10 million people.
Yeah, because it's so concentrated.
It's so concentrated, right? So
is it right that it's supposed to be China that produces almost all
China?
Of
this is what Johan Grillo told me. They produce the precursor, So there's like a precursor that you required, and then so what happens is China but these are like above the water, like above board, like just legitimate pharmaceutical companies who make this precursor, and then Mexican cartels are essentially acquiring it.
So presumably that precursor is even more concentrated. So you need even less of that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it works, if it's specifically a concentrated form or it's just one of the ingredients that on its own I don't think is necessarily toxic, or maybe it is, but it's not fentanyl on its own. But if you get that one precursor and then you add it to this, essentially like a recipe, I guess, I'm no expert on this, but that's
Fentanyl
what Jong grew. Yeah, essentially, yeah. Jeez. But so, and then I can't remember exactly what he told me, but something along the lines of like they had, like, the DEA tried to do some things with these Chinese companies, and then kind of like they're unable to really stop them because it's, I don't know, it's some sort of, and I think China says, we'll try and crack down on these, but again, they're not technically illegal because fentanyl is used by hospitals, and like if you have some massive surgery, they will give you some of these things.
Yes.
As painkillers. Like they are like real painkillers, but like anything they get abused. So
did you see Kim Jong-un wiping away tears as he asked North Korean women to have more children?
Yeah. And then the funniest thing is they're all in the audience, and they're all the moment one tear, they're all just like they don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah. Assessments show that the fertility rate in North Korea has been falling for a decade amid increasing concerns within families over lots of money being needed to raise children and food. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appeared to wipe away tears as he urged women to halt a decline in the country's birth rate. Mr. Kim was seen dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief in a rare moment of emotion as he addressed the National Mothers Meeting in Pyongyang. The Hyundai Institute report said that North Korea's population was expected to shrink starting in 2034.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I don't know what their demographic situation is like.
Fucked, dude. South Korea, I think, is at 0.6 or 0.8 as a birth rate. 2.1 is replacement.
2.1 is replacement, yeah.
And they, for every 100 South Koreans alive right now, there will be 4 great-grandchildren. It's a 96% extinction rate over the next 100 years.
Jesus.
It's fucking crazy.
Is there any country that's above 2.1?
Yes, so like, funnily enough, the highest on the planet, Chad.
Chad, yeah. Just like
because they're Chads.
Nice.
No, yeah, that's the highest, but even sub-Saharan Africa, every 15 years, the number of children that each mother has is decreasing by 1. So I think it's about 7 now, and then in 15 years it'll be 6, and then in 15 years it'll be 5, and 15 years it'll be 4.
In sub-Saharan, the average family size is 7 children?
At the moment, yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know whether that is per woman or per mother, because that's different. There are some women who don't have kids. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, if you actually look at that number in America, the number is still the same as it's always been. It's like 2.3. Mothers have about 2.3 children or 2.5 children or something like that. It's the non-mothers that is increasing. The women that have 0.
Right. Yeah.
If you have 1, you end up having like 2.5.
Yeah.
But if you have none, you keep having none.
Yeah, you keep having none. Yeah.
So yeah, dude, that whole birth rate thing. But that's one of the things that do you know Peter Zeihan? You seen that dude?
No.
It's like a geopolitics guy. I had him on the show a little while ago. He did Rogan too. And China's population is going to half basically over the next like.
That's so funny that they had their one-child policy.
Fucked it.
And it was such a disaster. But at the time, it seemed like such a necessary, great idea. And then it was like maybe one of the most short-sighted things because you can't just like undo that. You don't snap your fingers and go, okay, back to chew or however many you want. You're like, no, the damage from that policy is 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, I mean, the choice between like famine now or like extinction later is, I don't know, like.
I guess, yeah. But they have, I mean, it seems like everybody has huge demographic issues. I guess America, English-speaking Western countries, though, can fix that with just immigration, whereas China's probably a tougher place to immigrate
to.
They
can. But I mean, that's just kind of kicking the can down the road. If you have like a total global population like this, which is ultimately what matters, and you just start trying to fucking move chess pieces around so you don't get any more chess pieces.
Right. That is true. Yeah. I don't... Because I had this is total conspiracy theory based on nothing, but when Roe v. Wade got repealed, that my conspiracy brain was like, they're doing that because, they gave America the choice to have more
reduce their fertility.
So have more kids, and they go, you're not having more kids, so we're just going to force it on you. And we don't care how they come in or what. We need bodies.
The additional conspiracy theory on top of that, which I heard someone give me, was who are the people that are the least able, if you restrict access to abortion, who are the people that are least able to skirt around the rules? The poor people that become the worker drones.
Exactly.
So it was just, we need some more fucking blue collar, widget grinders.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, the way the economy is set up is it's essentially, I don't want to say a pyramid scheme, but it kind of is. It requires more people. The way that, having steady 2% growth every year that they aim for, and you need more growth. That's all that's how the whole game is set up, is just more people, right? They don't care. Obviously to agree, you want rich people, but you just need more people.
I need to learn. I've watched so many different explainers about how the global currency finance system and this embedded growth obligation and debt-based financing, and if you continue to kind of grow it, then it's almost like a Ponzi scheme within itself, where no one realizes that the new money is feeding the old debt.
Kind of, and just new real estate, for example. They always want to be building more and putting people in those things and putting people in those new houses. You don't ever want a scenario where there's just those Chinese ghost towns, and that's how they kind of set everything up. So they're just kind of slowly just building more things, and they need people to take those things.
After watching
and
all of these fucking things, dude, I still kind of don't fully understand how it works. I should probably just bring someone on the show.
It's just more people. It's just
more people means
more people means they need somewhere to live. And they consume more, they buy more stuff. That's again, some theories about why they're opening up the southern border, is they're just those people are still, regardless of how you feel about it. And
people are people.
They're still people, and they're still consumers. They still have to buy toilet paper, and they have to eat, and they have to get around. And, most of them, some people are very uncharitable. I'm not. Most of them will try and work, and they want to work. Obviously, because a lot of people are they'll just, live off the government teat kind of thing. I think that's a very small percentage of those people. Most of the people just want a better life. If I was in their position, I would do the exact same thing. If I lived in some Central American country with 50% unemployment rate, and I knew that, it's crazy because they're not even all Central Southern Americans. They're coming from all China, whatever. And, if I was in their position, I'd probably do the same thing.
Dude, have you heard what happens if you're a Cuban and you want to escape Cuba?
Oh, crazy.
So we have a mutual friend who did a film event of some kind in Canada, I think, and told me this story. So he did this one thing, and then his brother did a different thing. I'm pretty sure he filmed the entirety of this fucking journey that he was on. And I was hang on a fucking second. This is seeking asylum from a war-stricken country. I didn't realize that Cuba, it sounds so stupid. I didn't realize that Cuba was a place that, first off, you're kind of not allowed to leave, doesn't want you to leave. And
communist country. That's every communist country is, you're not allowed to leave. But
you've got, the US has basically got this rule where if you come from presumably Venezuela as well, and also maybe China, although I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just hey, we'll give you asylum. Don't worry. And this guy told me, so he did this thing where he snuck out at 4 a.m. from some event, and it was literally like a game of chicken. So he was leading this team of people, maybe they were videography team or something like that. And I think he maybe had a partner that was with him. And he knew, because he was the leader, that if anybody else left the party that he was a part of, he would be culpable.
Mm-hmm.
So he was I'm just going to fucking go before anyone else does.
Right.
So him and
game theory kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah.
And him and his partner leave at 4 a.m. in the morning, sneakily, pack their stuff, get out, hitchhike their way, blah, 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 do all of this shit, nearly get stopped, get to the American border. Hey, we're from Cuba.
Yeah.
Give us asylum. And then his brother does the same thing, but travels by land from fucking Cuba through Guatemala, through Belize, through fucking Mexico.
Well, there's the whole thing. They all just, because it's only 60 miles from Miami, right? Cuba it's only 60.
Is it really?
Oh, it's so close. There's all these
spit on it.
There's all these baseball players, because Cuba's has some of the best baseball players in the world.
Yep.
And
Dolis Garcia, is he Cuban?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. The guy on the Rangers, exactly. And they've had endless amounts of good players, but they're not allowed to leave. But some of them are like, if I could just get 60 miles, like El Duque, who used to play for the Yankees, I can't remember. I think his name was Orlando Hernandez in like the 90s. But he just like, dead of night, they hop on like a makeshift rickety raft, kind of like, and they get over. And if you can just get to shore,
there's a $5 million baseball contract waiting for you there.
50, 100 million for some of these guys. Some of these guys are like instantly, some of the top players in the league. But they do like the World Baseball Classic stuff where Cuba fields a team, and there's always, same with like Olympics, and there's always like a couple guys who just defect, right? But the problem is that there's, your family's still in Cuba, and so now they probably have some issues. Well, it's probably like a thing of like shame to a degree.
Well, the North Korean thing is, if you break the rules, it's not just you and your family that gets persecuted. It's like 8 generations of your family.
Yeah. They're extra
condemn your fucking future great granddaughter to being like a fucking minor or something.
Yeah, like my parents are from Russia. And like when my parents left, my mom's dad was in like the Communist Party in Russia, like this is in the 70s. And when she left, he got kicked out. Like they gave him the boot, and he was like a good, like, communist. He was like, he fought in the Red Army against the Nazis, all that stuff. Like he was like a war hero. And then they were just like, well, you did a bad job raising your child.
Yeah. That collective punishment thing is one hell of a like a motivator. Yeah, it's fucking wild, man. Do you see this undercover video shows Pornhub employees want porn to steer young people's sexual identity?
I saw that trending. I didn't actually watch the video. So it's just like a kind of Project Veritas type thing.
Exactly like that. Yeah. Employees of Pornhub's parent company were caught on camera touting the benefits of underage kids watching pornography, and even suggesting that making videos of transgender identifying people engaging in sex could help young people figure out their sexuality, according to a new video released exclusively on the Michael Knowles show on Wednesday. Employee Dylan Rice, a senior script writer at the company.
Script writer?
Is seen,
they still do that?
I don't know. They're seen arguing that pornography usage could be beneficial for preteens. Let's say you're 12 years old, you're still figuring out your sexuality, maybe even your gender. Wouldn't it be helpful to see a celebration, but maybe just a normalization of something that you think is what you want, Rice is seen saying. Rice went on to specifically reference a pornography site centered around transgender individuals, remarking, let's say I was 12 and I saw trans angels. It would help me figure out what I do like and what I don't like.
I mean, I guess I'm not sure. Like, I haven't gone through every category on the porn websites, but I imagine there's quite something for everybody there.
Do you know what the second most popular type of porn in India is?
No.
Breastfeeding. Ugh. Breastfeeding porn, dude, it's so strange. So this is from Seth Steven Davidowitz's book, Everybody Lies, and his argument was basically, you tell Google things that you don't even tell yourself or your journal or your partner, because it's what do you want, not what do you think about, like writing and reflecting on.
Yeah.
And he looked at Pornhub data, and it's just breastfeeding porn isn't big anyway. It's not even big in like surrounding countries, whatever the fuck's around India. It's not big. Indian men specifically, just seem to fucking love breastfeeding porn.
Weird.
Yeah.
And is there any theory as to why?
He gave me like because cows are sacred.
Oh, wow. This is like deep.
Yeah. it's like some fucking religious
deep symbolism here.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, this, I don't know. Like, I've been thinking this more and more about the some of the expose shit that we see online. There was a screen grab of maybe a Tinder conversation or a dating conversation that went mega hyper viral of a guy saying that he wanted a traditional wife, and the woman saying, that's really great because that's what I want too. And then he accused her of being a gold digger because she said that she would stay at home. And it's like early days dating or whatever. But it just, like, reading it seemed so not the way that people text. There was unnecessary exposition about the fact that they went for dinner last night, and I knew that I shouldn't have done that. And she was like, what do you mean? I paid for the bill at dinner last night. Yeah. And it was like,
you think it's fake?
This just feels a little bit clunky. Yeah. That seemed like a fucking false flag. But the same thing with like some of the fucking secret camera shit, and also the same for on-street interviews. Like the on-street interviews, the ones that make these compilations, like what didn't make it? Like, how many people said, I'm just really looking for someone that kind of respects me and loves golden retrievers?
That's not going viral.
No.
Yeah, so, it's always the worst stuff, you know, and yeah, you don't know, like that, like it could be legitimately. We talked to 1,000 people, 2 of them said the worst shit you've ever heard of, and that's the only one that's interesting, I guess.
It's this weird combination of, is it legit? So is what you're seeing contrived, made up, like that set of screenshots that I think was, and okay, let's say that that's not. Was this an unfair representation of what most people saw? And then what does what they said actually mean? Is what they're saying what they meant to say?
Yeah.
And is that actually how they're going to show up in their
How it's
life?
edited, like, oh
Yeah,
man.
dude, like every time I think about it, I know it's like flogging a dead horse about like, oh, it's so hard to work out what the facts are, and people can't even agree on what the word truth means anymore.
Oh, we can't agree on anything anymore. Like,
It's wild.
It's insane. Every argument now is just everybody talking past each other. Everybody almost seems like when they're arguing, there seems like there might be some resolution. Like everybody feels like someone will be like, they say the point, everybody goes, all right, yeah, okay, we've sorted it out, but it's not. Everybody is just, you're on your side, and that's it. That's everybody's, you know, just picks a side, and then they're staying on that side. It's very rare, I think, right now where people's minds are changed.
When was the last time? I keep thinking about this on Twitter. No one ever actually breaks the fourth wall on Twitter and says, hey, that was out of order. Like, you can't say that.
Mhm.
It's always this like clap back satirical game of tennis where you're trying to be wittier or more cutting than what the last person said. And it's all like sardonic, passive aggressive, like quote fucking subtweeting what the last person said.
Yeah.
It's never someone like just going like, hey, that's out of order. You don't
Right.
get to say that. No one actually fucking treats it like an actual conversation.
No. I mean, you know what? The closest I've seen to some, which was like, brought me so much joy. I thought it was the funniest thing to some sort of argument that resolved was in, I posted this video about, because since it's been going on for a while, it used to be like really, you know, dark web kind of, stuff, like white supremacist stuff, but these charts of how Jews that are representation of Jews and things, like in, I don't know if you've seen it, they'll be all like, it'll say like all the Jews in politics or the media or whatever, and these giant charts. Remember Kanye? He held up that, he had his thing about the spreadsheet. Yeah. So then once the war started, all these anti-Israel people were like, look at all these Jews that are, and so then I made this sketch. And it was the guy that researches how many Jews are in things. And I'm like this very just like autistic, just like, I just like knowing how many Jews there are in things. And I just make these lists or whatever of Jews there are in things. And it went like really viral. And then in the comments was this guy, and is like he goes, well, what's so funny? Like, you know, because essentially a guy is like, who had his list, and then he goes, my list is, he goes, here's, and he had a drive link of a public list that he made, and then he started getting in an argument with another guy who's like, I have a list and my list is actually better. It's more thorough. And then they were like in the comments going back and forth with each other about whose list of Jews.
Dick measuring competition.
But it was
circumcised dick measuring.
Yeah, but they were just like, who's has a more accurate list of Jews that are represented in things. And then they were arguing, and then they finally, the one guy goes, you know what? I looked at yours, and yours is actually better than mine. And then they kind of like became friends.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my God.
You watched a burgeoning bromance occur
kind
in your
of
comments.
in my comments. I screenshotted it all because I thought it was the funniest thing. And they essentially started off as enemies.
Dude, it's been a fucking rough year for Jews this year. Like, but honestly, like between Kanye and fucking Middle East.
Well, everybody's so surprised about the what's going on now with the Jewish stuff. But I saw it firsthand with the Kanye stuff, because when the Kanye thing, you know, I was commenting on that, and, you know, like I was making sketches around that. And so I would go on YouTube on, and it was, you know, pretty much all in favor of Kanye. So I was not surprised. Now people are like, what's going on? People don't like Jews, huh? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that that's kind of been bubbling up. I think that's always kind of under the surface, literally for the last 3,000 years.
But I don't have my head up my ass that much. Like I notice trends, and I pay attention to shit as best I can. And I had no fucking idea that there was this much latent anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's like herpes. It's like a cultural herpes where it has these outbreaks, like these flare-ups, you know, and then it kind of like goes away, and then it kind of flares up again, and then it is really weird to see, because I have some friends who kind of don't realize, because I get it, because I comment on this stuff a lot, A lot of the sketches I make are like around this stuff, like the ones I personally make, not with like Ryan. And and then like some of the you see like insane comments. But I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, people have started to use like
the only thing I can do is just make fun of it. There's no, it's the only.
Even the episode I did with Peterson a couple of weeks ago, there was a bunch of comments calling him Juden
Peterstein. Yeah, I love it. The problem is, I'm like, I find it so funny. I think a lot of Jews don't find it funny. They're like, this is more serious, and I guess that could be determined. I sometimes joke about it where I make too much fun of this stuff, and then I'm, getting put on a train, and I go, I made too much fun of that. I should have taken that more seriously.
Alex Jones tells Tucker Carlson that President Biden walks around the White House naked, drugged on amphetamines and benzos, as Elon Musk says that he's considering allowing Alex Jones back on X.
Yeah. That, I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I suppose it's possible.
Well, everyone's been.
They should let him back on, though.
Everyone's been speculating for quite a while about what they've had to pump Biden with in order to roll him out on stage.
Yeah.
Like some like sort of punch drunk WWE style, like Hulk Hogan coming back for another. They need like a cortisol shot in the knee.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get some like fucking opioids for my spine, and chiropractor's gonna come in and do this thing.
I don't know. He seems to have his moments for sure where he's better, and when like sometimes you'll see him talking and you go, oh, he seems okay right now, but then sometimes, I mean, I kind of joke about it. He's the only 81-year-old who we treat poorly like this. Like, if he was not like a civilian, like we would never remember when he fell off his bike and everybody's like, that fucking idiot fell off his bike. And you're like, he's an old man.
Yeah. You'd pick him up and be like,
hey, you're like, are you okay?
Yeah,
are you okay? Like, can we get you? And now we're just like, he fell off his bike. But I guess when you're the most powerful person in the world, there's
that's so right.
There's a higher standard.
That's so right. Like, everyone's really mean to old people.
He's like a sweet old man.
That being said,
maybe not sweet, but
yeah. I think someone highlighted that if Trump gets in office next year, he will be older than when Biden got in office.
I believe so. Yeah,
term.
Yeah. Trump looks older.
Does he?
Yeah,
I haven't seen him recently. Showing the old age on the face.
He looks. I mean, again, I don't know what the kind of curve is. Like the aging curve, when I've seen some people say it's almost closer to a step function. Yeah, like you just like you age kind of like it kind of
really hits you.
Yeah, it really hits you because he does seem more than 4 years older than he was 4 years ago.
There's that famous photo of Obama, right? Like before and after presidency.
It's every president. That shit ages you. I mean, when you have to press a button and kill a village, it has to take a toll on you.
Do you know how they do the
sorry.
like fucking nuclear football? Do you know how that thing works?
No.
I found out from this guy. It's so fucking fascinating. So there's 130 missile silos, IBCM nuclear missile silos all around the States, right? At each one of those, at all times, there are two officers, and both of the officers have keys around their neck. Now, what you would think would happen is there's a nuclear football that goes with the president, and it's got a special piece of paper that they snap in like a wax seal. They snap that, they pull it apart. There's a piece of paper inside that's got a code. They enter the code. That then triggers the silo. The people get the code, enter the code, turn the keys at the same time. The reason you have two people is so that one is accountable to the other, and so that one person can't do it on their own, but also that you don't get, I think it's called like willing dissenters or something, so that one person, it's like there's pressure, right? It's like, no, dude, this is your job. Like, we've got to do the thing. But obviously one of the problems that you have with doing it that way is if you're the guy that the silo comes off, both of you can be nervous about doing it. So I'm about to fucking turn the key and kill like thousands of people or something. So every 45 minutes or so, every single silo around the entire US has one of these things happen.
Really?
All of them. And then the guys get their keys, put them in, turn them, enter the code, press the fucking button, and then they go back. So they...
What?
Yeah. It's like around about every single hour, and I think they're on 8-hour shifts, and there's like whatever the bunches of people, so 24 hours a day, 365, this is happening. And they always go off. It goes off all the time, and they don't know if it's real or if it's another one of the drills.
Yeah, it's just a drill.
And they just have to, and the reason that they do that is when it does happen, if it does happen, when it's real, it's just you've been programmed. It's like this is part and parcel.
Yeah, it's just like the.
But you'll have heard
muscle
the
memory.
stories from Russia. It's the opposite there. So it's the most junior members of staff that do that. Or some of the most junior intelligence officers that have the keys, because it's kind of a bit of a droogy job. It's like put the key in, turn it, press the button, blah,
Yeah.
whatever. But in Russia, it's the opposite. It's the most senior members of staff. But you'll remember, like, there's like 3 times that we've come basically super close to nuclear war, and it turned out to be like pieces of foil that were in the sky, or like the glints of birds or something, or some misreading on the.
There was a
radar.
submarine one
Correct.
where they lost contact, and they basically had some sort of order. Like, I can't remember the exact story. I think I heard it on Coast to Coast or something, but it's like a famous like a U.S. submarine. They lost full contact, and essentially like the protocol was that they believed that they were under
Press the
nuclear
fucking
attack, and they had to do it. And then some guy.
Willing dissenter.
He overrode. He goes, "No, we're not doing it." And then he was right. And had he not been, they would have just accidentally launched.
Crazy. So that happened like I think at least 2 or 3 times in Russia. But this in the US, this was the final like fucking kicker that I learned from this dude. And he said that not only is it all of them happening almost all the time, 24 hours a day, 365, and they don't know if it's real or if it's fake, but all of them are part of one network. So all it takes is for one pair of people to enter the code.
And they all fire?
And they'll fire whichever one needs, because they're all pointing at different places.
Yeah.
Like, I can be in fucking Iowa and the Wisconsin fucking thing goes off. So you need like one pair of people out of 130 pairs of people who also have the accountability of each other and also don't know if it's real or if it's fake. And then I guess just one day, if it ever happens, one day you're just going to fucking like put the code in and then hear, and be like,
that's insane. You're holy shit.
So fucking wild.
That's wild. I had no idea. I always thought it was just the president enters the thing and goes, press it. Literally, I assume
some people.
You just open a briefcase, there's a button, you go
whack.
And
no,
wow.
Fucking cool.
Probably better though that way.
What have you reflected on about this sort of Matt Rife fallout? Have you thought about this much?
I thought, honestly, I feel like I know a guy who like opens for him, and I he has a unique situation because his audience, one, he got famous super fast. His audience is all women, right? It's like 90. It's the opposite of our audience. Like literally, it's like all women. And I think when this stuff, like, it was a basic joke. It wasn't anything that crazy, but I think Matt Rife, probably wants to be like, I just want to be a comedian for everyone. So I think he kind of leaned into this controversy because it allowed him to kind of just
shave off a bit of the audience.
Yeah, you go, I'm going to get rid of the 10% of the most annoying audience that just kind of, is maybe a little fair weather, and I don't want to cave to their demands. I just want to do what I want. And he might have been able to replace those 10% with a new 10% of guys. So net, it probably is a better move. So that's kind of how I read it. He's just like, look, I'm a comic. I'm not trying to cater to a specific audience.
Do you think that playing it that way, because he then posted like the Instagram story of the special needs help?
Yeah. He's just trying to be like, that's just comic stuff.
Do you think that that's given him, or will give him, more legitimacy in like the comedy world? Not that he doesn't already have it, but
yeah. I mean, I don't think he needs like legitimately like, he sells 5,000 tickets a night. Like,
right. That's legitimate enough.
Yeah, that's legitimate enough. I think he just wants maybe to not be pigeonholed and nobody really does, I think, as a comedian. So I think he just wants to say, hey, I'm not like some just handsome dude who's not doing jokes. I can be funny just like another comedian would, which I think was probably a smart move for him.
I think I totally.
And then you get also just all the people complaining about you, and it just raises your profile because, he was on TMZ. Everybody's like, oh, this guy. So I'm sure lots of people didn't even know who he was.
Yeah. Well, I think Rogan said his show has never had as many plays as when CNN was featuring him.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the Streisand effect, if you use it right, it can be pretty powerful.
And there, it's a saying, but there is really no negative publicity, like as long as you're not doing something like criminal, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I told you about this last night, but Sam Harris talks about digital leprosy.
Yeah.
But this is almost like purposeful leprosy, or like elected leprosy. So Sam's point being that he gets into different furors and debates or whatever on Twitter, but now doesn't have Twitter. So bits of his audience might be mad at him and be leaving but because he's not there, he doesn't notice it. Kind
Yeah,
of
he
like a
doesn't know.
leopard, like the fingers fall off and the fuck falls off, and they're like, oh, like I didn't feel it. But I wonder whether Matt, in some regards, almost was like, oh, this is my opportunity to cull some barnacles off the bottom of the ship that
Absolutely.
I don't want.
Yeah.
So if I lean into this even more, I'll get rid of like a little bit of more barnacles too.
And I mean, what's he supposed to do? Apologize for a joke? Like, that is like the number one rule of comedy. You do not apologize for your jokes.
I asked Schultz this last year. Do you think that is there such a thing as a joke that shouldn't be told?
I mean, if it constantly bombs, I mean, that's the only thing.
Is it funny?
Is it funny and is it not funny? You know, obviously that's like the starting point. Is it funny or is it not funny? If you tell a joke and it constantly bombs and you go, yeah, don't tell that joke, then you can get into, you know, more like craft kind of stuff where you say, hey, is this a good joke? Because there's bad jokes that do
Make
well,
people laugh.
that make people laugh, and there may be cheap jokes or whatever. Then you can start getting into that. But you know, every comic they have to make those decisions for themselves.
That's exactly what Schultz said.
Yeah.
Literally, he was like, I said, is there a joke that shouldn't be told? And he said, is it funny? And I was like, yes. He said, tell it.
Yeah.
If it's a funny joke, you're allowed to tell it.
Yeah, exactly. You're allowed to tell it. And then if you want to say, like, you know, every comic sometimes will come up with a joke and then you tell it and it kills and you go, feels kind of cheap, you know, for
Icky.
whatever reason.
What's like a...
It might not even be, it might be icky because it's just like, it's kind of hacky.
What's like an example of something like
just like what we were talking about with the, you know, you're just, comics are talking about their lives and then,
Right.
you know, you talk about your life. Like it was the airplane stuff going through the airport sometimes or whatever. And you sometimes be like, it's like, that's a funny joke, but, you know, maybe it's not the best take
like
on
a
it.
Biden falling off a bike joke or something?
Kind of. Or, I mean, I'll tell you what, because comedy has shifted because of the speed at which it used to be like a lot of comedians would put out a new special every like 4 years kind of thing. And now it's a little quicker because in order to tour and just the amount of comedians, but a lot of comics will comment on the same stuff. Like, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer show came out and then there's 10 comedians. You know, you might be the first, but then eventually
everyone's doing Jeffrey Dahmer bits.
Everybody's doing Jeffrey Dahmer bits, and then you got to be like, okay, do I have the best Jeffrey Dahmer bit, or am I at least there's like it's almost like an arms race to get it out there to be like at least I'm the first one to get it out there because you definitely don't want to be the guy with the special with you know the 10th Jeffrey Dahmer bit, right? But everybody's watching the same stuff right now. Like, and all these things are the biggest cultural things, you know? So if you want to comment on the thing that everybody is seeing, I mean, the classic thing would be Trump with late night, you know? It became so trite and it ruined these comedians. It literally like ruined their brains. You know, they were constantly just, all they could talk about was Trump and it was dishonest how they were talking about it. And people kind of, you know, at first people were like, yeah. And then even people on the left were like, okay, this is just tack. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Well, we were talking last night about this sort of fallout from late night show hosts trying to come and do less scripted, more just banter stuff. And you kind of get to see like who's swimming naked there as well.
They're all swimming. I mean, it was for that Strike Force 5 thing that they did, the 5 late night hosts during the strike. And I watched it. It was terrible.
Painful.
It was literally a Zoom call between 5 guys. They had nothing prepared. They just, and you know, the very classic, like they told, you know, Stephen Colbert was telling some story about some famous dictator's pants that he had, and like some famous, I can't remember, but like some dictator like dated his mom or something in like the 60s.
Memorabilia or some bullshit.
Yeah, and he's like, I have his pants. And then they tell some story about like buying, I saw Sammy Davis Jr. Jimmy Kimmel's like, yeah, I saw Sammy Davis Jr. at like a store.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just so banal and mundane. And, you know, you can tell they're like, yeah, the crazy thing is these guys have all 20 writers. Yeah. And the 20 writers still are not cranking out much.
What do you think's the future? What's the future of comedy from where you're seeing it? Like one of the trends you've seen is that specials are having to be paced up more quickly. Yeah,
for sure. Louis was kind of the first guy who pressed the accelerator, but now, you know, yeah, you have to, especially if you're talking about certain things, it gets stale. So you either put it out or you just can do it and then stop doing it, which is not.
Is there a delicate balance between showing enough of what you're working on that are good jokes on Instagram or TikTok or whatever to be able to sell tickets for your shows versus not releasing your entire special in 45-second chunks in advance of the special.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes this is kind of a newer thing where a lot of comics will, when they go on the road, they'll have a little time devoted to just kind of stuff that's in the news. And they're not the most polished jokes, but because they're referencing something so current, they actually will hit well. And then you can release those because those don't actually really make the act.
Right. Yeah.
Those will like Mark Norman, Sam Morril does a good job of that. Ryan does a good job of that. But yeah, they'll just kind of like, it's almost like how we comment on something on a podcast,
Oh, this shit happened. Britney Spears. You see that?
Exactly. And you're not really, it's not good enough where you're like, this isn't going to make
Britney
the
Spears
act.
isn't going to be a part of the special.
Yeah, it's not going to be a part of the special, but we can talk about this today and this one weekend at this show. And then I'll clip this, I'll film this and put it out.
Very good.
And so you kind of.
What else is happening in the world of like
comedy? I mean, it's like, it's really funny. Me and Ryan were talking about how a lot of comedians are now like actor, like the actual celebrities are now becoming podcasters essentially because that whole world is fragmenting. We're not really in it, to be honest, but that whole world of comedy is getting very fragmented. Like, the people who are fans of us, I can't imagine they don't watch late night. They don't really, I don't even know what comedies are on. Like, I don't know what a comedy show is on right now.
Big Bang?
No, it's been off. So that's so funny. We talked about that. It's been canceled for like 7 years or something.
Has it?
But
I never watched it.
If you walk around New York right now,
you'd feel like it was.
No. They have like the buses and taxis have all ads for it because that's what's going on with comedy, where they're promoting a show that's been canceled for 7 years like it's a show that's on because there's no good shows that are on. I know there's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is on, which is like all the good shows comedy-wise are the shows that have been on for 15 years, like South Park, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But in terms of new comedies, and I get it. There's, you don't want to take these risks. There's a disincentive to comedic risk-taking because of, the climate, I guess. So, and they don't. And the comedies that come out are just the most vanilla, like kind of mundane shit. And nobody
I wonder whether
watches
the
them.
distance, because South Park's illustrated, I wonder whether the distance that the people who make it have from the like actors that make the actual front and center on the TV show. I wonder if that's giving them a little bit more longevity.
I just think that they're such a moneymaker, and like Comedy Central, like for example, Comedy Central doesn't make anything anymore. They just don't. Like I couldn't tell you what they make. They just air reruns of their properties that they have, maybe Key and Peele. It used to be Comedy Central. If you got a special on Comedy Central, that was cool. It's not anymore. Like nobody will say that, being like, "Oh, sick! I got a half hour." I don't even think they do half hours. They'll do maybe like these 10 minutes. But Comedy Central's YouTube channel. I've said this many times, but because I do live streaming for my call-in show that I do on Tuesday nights. It's called Low Value Mail. If you want to check it out, MAIL. But they have 11.6 million subscribers on their YouTube channel, Comedy Central, and they'll do these live streams of stand-up. It's like 200-300 people watching. Like they've absolutely killed their brand, like killed it. It's destroyed. I don't even think it could be resurrected at this point. So
that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, think about it. Like Daily Wire has to make comedy stuff right now. And I saw a thing with Jeremy where he's saying like, Joe Rogan essentially was like, you guys have to make this. And then he's like, yeah, you know what? We do kind of have to make this because nobody else will. And there's just everybody just wants to play it safe especially with comedy. There hasn't been, I've been beating this horse because it's just so crazy to me. There has not been a popular comedy movie, like a big box office hit in now 10 years.
What was the last one?
Ted 2. Like if you look at the top 50 comedy movies of all time by box office, the only one, like the most recent one of those was Ted 2.
Wow.
10 years ago. Like there's just, it obviously overlaps perfectly with what's going on culturally.
Tell you what, speaking of Ted 2, Family Guy is still going. I didn't realize that it's still going. Where do you watch it? I've seen clips of it or whatever.
It's on Fox.
It's on Fox,
Yeah,
right?
Simpsons too.
But that seems to have really, I don't know. I remember 10, 15 years ago, Family Guy was like fucking
Crazy.
hot.
Yeah, they were.
This is going to be this. It made South Park almost look slow in some ways.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah.
like more cool and more cutting, and the characters are kind of a bit more lovable. And now I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't. I you know what? I can't even comment on it. I have not seen Family Guy in a long time. I'm sure it has its moments, but again, it's just one of those things where it's probably just some big money maker. They're not going to really be able to replace it with something that is comparable.
Yeah, Jimmy Carr taught me about this idea of trajectory being more important than position. So if you are 100th in the world at a thing, but last year you were 200th in the world, there is more allure and excitement around you than if you're number 3 in the world, but last year you were number 2.
Right.
So basically your sort of trajectory is more important than your absolute position. And you're right with what you say about...
Well, it's because it's more up. Like there's more upside and there's more potential and there's more unknowns.
Correct.
Around it, right? Like once you're 2, you go, well, you can only be 1 and that's it. And then we're done thinking about where this could go. There's no daydreaming about what could happen here.
Yes. Yeah. How high could they rise? Maybe even higher than the highest person.
Right,
you know?
right.
But yeah, that sort of slow decline. But yeah, man, it's one of those things. I can totally see it why people would sacrifice credibility or cool or whatever. And it's not like they always purposefully do this. Sometimes people just like make calls that tweet things or say things or do whatever that's like, fuck, I thought that was kind of cool or interesting or whatever at the time, and it didn't be. It's not everything is a rational, purposeful decision, but a good chunk of it is just not keeping your eye on the ball. And you're right, Comedy Central to go from where they were to where they are now.
And it was just all the kind of, not to sound like some crazy like boomer or whatever, but it really was the diversity stuff because they were, when I think everything got like, it was almost like a hockey stick when Trump showed up, like in terms of this massive overreaction, course correction kind of thing. But, they wrongly were overemphasizing like white guys. Like when people say, they put too many of them. But the problem is how do you, like you can't just like exactly represent everybody. Like that's like communism essentially. Like what? We're going to have a exact representation of every person.
12.5%.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's literally impossible. So they overdid it one way and then they went and they overdid it the other way. But with comedy, the problem is that sometimes like you can't just, I know that you want to keep your jobs, right? And the only way to do so at the time was to say, hey, we need to like really make this super diverse. But like there just wasn't the people available to do that. Like you can't just say, hey, this person's checks these 3 boxes. You're like, but that person's been doing stand-up for 3 months. They're just not good. It's nothing against them. And like I don't blame those people for taking that thing, but you're like, that's just not how art should be.
It's a ruthless position almost to put the elected person into as well, because what's going to happen? That they're going to say no. They're going to put they're not going to say no. But if they say yes, then they're kind of, by all of the people in the industry that actually care, they feel like they've got an unfair leg up, and then they're like, oh, right, okay, so I say no to this, and I maybe never get this opportunity again.
You would never say no. Like comedians are rarely turning down any opportunities like that. So yeah, you take the opportunity and then, but if you go look at the comments, right? Like comedy, go look at Comedy Central stand-up's Instagram page, right? I think they've kind of seeing the error of their ways, but in classically way too late. But it's all these people who followed them for Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle. And then they just started putting all these just kind of essentially amateur comedians on for the purpose of diversity, which is truly self-serving because it was for the purpose of these people keeping their jobs, right? Because they essentially, it was like the tide came out and they were like, man, the tide's out and we fucked up. We put too many white people on or whatever. So then now we have to overreact. And then all the comments are like, what is this shit? Like people are like, where's the, you got the like, where's the joke? And I feel bad for the diverse people who are actually good, because then when they get put up, people will think it's for the purpose of diversity, right? And you're like, so it's an unwinnable position. Because if they wanted to say, hey, we're going to put the best people on, then there was a chance that it might not be representative enough, quote unquote. Because the thing is, there was, when I started comedy, which is 15 years ago, a lot of women would fairly, or at least say like, they would be the tokenized person on a show, right? They would say like, we already have one woman on the show, kind of like you'd hear that, like a show with 8 people. But also, they were about that ratio of comedians. Like, it wasn't ever 50-50. Like, comedy's a guy thing, or at least was. And then, you know, when this stuff started happening, they were like, okay, we need 50-50. And you're like, that is not how comedy shakes out.
In the barrel of women.
But that's not how comedy shakes out. Like, it's not 50-50. Like, it's not, if you took a master list of all comedians, it's not half women. It's probably now a quarter.
Well, I'll tell you one interesting thing that I realized was I come from a nightlife background, the number of female DJs, right? Because you can be a good DJ, you can be an all right producer and a very, very good DJ. So people go to see people that play good club sets that don't necessarily produce and make music that's absolutely banged and gone into the charts. But when you're doing DJing, there is, other than the selection of the things, it's not like you don't know who's doing it. If I listen to a podcast with a guy or a podcast with a woman, like, I know, I hear what's coming out of them. And also they have different talking points too. But with DJing, it's like, if I press a fucking Tiesto track, or if a chick presses a Tiesto track, it is the exact same thing happens, right? So from a performance standpoint, it's completely egalitarian. But from a lifestyle standpoint, do you want to just pack and unpack and live in hotels and be on the road and be up until 4 a.m. for 150 days of the year? Like, is that a lifestyle that you actually want?
Yeah.
But if you want to try and get 50-50 representation, you're going to have to like dig into population rather than like industry demographics.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to find people who are, you know, maybe, I don't know if in the world of DJing, not as qualified or whatever, but I mean, again, this is communism. Like when all this stuff, when we were in Canada and we were making stuff, and then the tide started to turn on this stuff, and like Ryan would have like a show at CBC, and CBC would say like, they'd literally send him a spreadsheet where you say, you have to have all these things. And it was funny because Ryan was the writer, director, or producer. So that's all white guys. And so Ryan's essentially like, I have to like fire myself. Right? Which is weird because he's like, one, I don't need I don't need a director. I want to direct it myself. I want to do all this stuff myself. But then CBC's like, well, you're literally 3 white guys in this scenario. But then I would show my mom.
He's 1/3 of a white guy, technically.
Well, no, you know, that's the problem. Is he's not.
Took 2 jobs away from people of color.
Literally, that's how they see it. And I told my mom this, and my mom was like, "Yeah, that's like what Russia was like. Like that's like what living in communist Russia was like. Like I get it. Look, there's always going to be someone getting the short end of the stick. And that's why I, you know, don't get too, you know, when I'm get told like, hey, we're not seeing, you know, when I was doing acting in Canada, they'd be like, hey, if you weren't a white guy, maybe we could help you out, but just that's how it's going. And I never really got too worked up over it because there's always been someone who was told that.
Yes.
Someone's always going to get the short end of the stick. So you just got to take it, you know, like, I don't really know. I'm not going to be like making it my identity and complaining about it. I just go, okay, fine. I'll figure out a way. And I have, you know, so, and thankfully there's YouTube and the internet and all that stuff where everybody can kind of carve out their own thing.
Hell yeah. Danny, let's bring this one home. Where should people go? They want to keep up to date.
You can find me on Twitter, Danny Jokes. Unfortunately, on Instagram, Danny Jokes 2.0. I'm hopefully will get my old Instagram, regular Danny Jokes back. But if you want to find me on Instagram, Danny Jokes 2.0. Boyscast, as you see right here. My life partner. Yeah, my pleasure. My Ryan Long, who's on the road right now. But we do new episodes every Friday on YouTube, youtube.com/The Boyscast. And I do a call-in show that I referenced that had Johan Grillo on. I had Mark Dice on recently, and I just love kind of like talk radio. I've always been like a talk radio fan. I don't know why, but every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. called Low Value Mail, MAIL, and that's the name of the YouTube channel, and you can check it out. It's a fun time. It's the only podcast where you can watch and call in and be on as you're watching. Even though it's just a radio show. But it's on YouTube. But yeah, man, appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate you too. Thank you. Yeah. If you enjoyed that episode, then press here for a selection of the best clips from the podcast over the last few weeks. And don't forget to subscribe.